Hey everyone, since this is a new channel and our first video, we wanted to cover some of the progress that we're making on the studio as it comes together, and then also talk about the biggest piece of that puzzle, which is going to be the streaming station, which will have a dedicated gaming machine for 2 people. The problem is we have 2 people that need to game, and we have room on our desk for 1 PC. Actually, we don't even have room on the desk for that, so it's going to sit on the floor, which then you might ask, why not just put 2 PCs on the floor? Well, we don't have 2 PCs, and we don't have the money for another one, so we're going to do 1 PC for 2 streamers. So we're going to call this 2 streamers, 1 CPU, in light of Linus Tech Tips 7 gamers, 1 CPU that they did a number of years ago. But we don't have the capacity to do 7, and we only need to do 2 anyway. We're not going to use Unraid. We're going to use open source Proxmox, and I'm going to show you guys how to configure that and how it's set up. And as far as the hardware goes, we're going to be using my personal Threadripper 1920X. It's a ASRock X399M micro ATX board with 32 gigs of 2933 RAM and a 1 terabyte solid state drive. But we're going to have to add a couple of upgrades to it to make it capable of having 2 people play off of it at the same time. So what we need to add to this is we need another hard drive, or in this case another solid state drive, because we need to pass through 2 solid state drives to 2 different Windows virtual machines. And we also need a boot drive for Proxmox, which is the hypervisor. So we're going to need to install 2 new solid state drives. Luckily, we have 2 of them right here. So we're going to give another 1 terabyte drive for the Windows installation and a 120 gig solid state drive specifically for the hypervisor. Well, then we also need to look at the graphics cards. It's probably one of the most important pieces of a gaming computer, right? Currently, we have a Radeon R9 Fury, and we need to add another card. So what we have to add there is our XFX RX 580. And then what we also need to add, because we're going to be using NDI to stream from this system over to our Ryzen 1700X stream machine, is what we're going to call it. We're going to need a couple more network interface cards. So the motherboard actually has 2 already, and it has built-in Wi-Fi, but we're not going to use Wi-Fi here. We're going to use gigabit Ethernet. So we're also going to install an Intel 1 gigabit NIC. So with this, we'll pass through this one to one of the Windows virtual machines. We'll pass through one of the ones built in on the motherboard to the Windows virtual machine. We'll leave one set to bridge mode as a virtual network adapter for the virtual machines, and the 2 that are directly passed through will have a cross-connect cable directly connecting to the stream machine for low latency. Alright, we're going to go ahead and get the hardware installed, and we're going to start with moving the R9 Fury from its current PCI Express slot to the last PCI Express slot, so that we can make room to fit the gigabit network interface card and also the RX 580. Now that we've got the R9 Fury moved down, we're going to go ahead and install the gigabit network adapter, and that's going to go in that center PCI Express slot. And then finally, that leaves just enough room for us to get this RX 580 slotted in. Now hopefully with that 200mm intake fan, we won't have any overheating issues with these cards being so close. we're just going to go ahead and plug in the two 8 pins into the R9 Fury and one 8 pin into the RX 580. And we're going to swap the case around and go ahead and start getting our SSDs installed. You can see these just slot right into the chassis holders there, and pretty simple. And then once we get these installed, originally we had them spaced evenly apart. We ended up moving them closer together so that we didn't have quite as long of a run for our SATA cables. Now you can see me here, I'm removing the old platter drive I was using as a game storage drive. It's actually a SSHD, it's a FireCuda. But we're not going to be using it in Proxmox, so go ahead and get that out of there. And put the tray back in where it's safe, back in the case. And we're just going to go ahead and hook up the power cables and finish hooking up the SATA data cables. And this is where I started moving those to take a little tension off of those cables. Alright, so we just got everything installed, and the moment of truth now is, does it turn on and does it work? So we're going to go back here and go and flip the switch and hit the power button and see what happens. Hey, there we go. All right. And since I already had Windows installed, it's probably going to want to boot off of that. Yep. So we're just going to make sure that all of our devices show up in Windows, and then we're going to go from there, and we're going to go to part 2, where we install Proxmox, get it configured, get Windows reinstalled in both the virtual machines on these two 1 terabyte SSDs. And then we're going to set up the stream and see how it works.